All right. Hey, everyone. And hope you can hear me okay. Let me know in the comment section uh, if you can hear me okay, because I am streaming kind of differently than what I normally do. This is a brand new way I'm bringing you live streams now. Gives me a little bit more access to things, and just in all, it looks like a better way to do this. So I'm going to be doing a lot of live streams using this kind of thing. So today's kind of a test episode using this platform. So hopefully it works okay. And let me know in the comments section again if we are live okay and everything is looking and sounding okay, because I can't hear it, you guys can. So anyway, let's look at a couple of things here and make sure we are yeah, we're looking good. Okay. So on my end, everything looks good. Millsup Duo, Hey History Saver 1941. Can't wait for the live stream. Uh, thank you. We are here, and everything is running great. Okay, good deal. All right, so we're good to go. That's all I need to know. Thank you so much for letting me know that, Millsup. Really appreciate it. So because I was kind of worried about that, but yeah, so you guys, as you've seen yesterday, I said we're going to go live here. We're going to talk about a a cool subject, kind of doing a different live stream here this morning that is corresponding in what we are getting ready to do, which is something I've been looking forward to doing a very long time. And you really don't see too much of it on YouTube on this subject, and you really don't hear too much of the subject in general, which kind of stinks, to be quite honest with you. So, and if you guys see me reaching up here, just please excuse that. I'm just scrolling through the comments here, looking at different things, making sure we're running good. But that what we're talking about is the American Revolution in the South, in the Southern theater of operations in the colonies, and mainly the year we're concerning right now is 1778, 1779. And the reason why we're talking about this is because we are leaving in a day or so to head to film some more content for the channel. And we're headed to Savannah, Georgia, and we're also headed to Charleston, South Carolina. And we are in the middle of the Gettysburg series still. We have episode dropping hopefully today on the wheat field. Either today or tomorrow, it will be dropping on the channel, a new episode from the wheat field at Gettysburg. And then we have, I think, two more episodes from Gettysburg, if I'm not mistaken. And then we're going to be doing Antietam, Harper's Ferry, New Market, and then we're jumping into the American Revolution, starting with Valley Forge. Then we'll be moving to Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. And then we will be moving south to where I'm going this week in Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina, talking about the American Revolution in the South. And that is what we're kind of discussing today, is the topic of the American Revolution in the South. During this live stream, please feel free to leave your comments, leave your questions in the chat. And even if you're watching this after the live stream airs, please feel free to do so, and I'll do my best to answer those and to shed, whatever light you need on that, and acknowledge those. But the deal with the American Revolution in the South, what is it? Well, I'm going to be quite frank honest with you. It kind of ticks me off when I'm reading about the American Revolution, and I'm reading about Yorktown. I'm reading about Concord. I'm reading about Lexington. I'm reading about um, Boston. I'm reading about Baltimore. I'm reading about all these other places, Valley Forge. But then you don't see anything about perhaps the most important part of the whole American Revolution, the war in the South. And why was the war in the South during the American Revolution important? Well, if you pick up textbooks today, I recently picked up a school textbook, history textbook. There were 3 pages on the American Revolution, and not one paragraph mentioned the war in the Southern theater of operations during the American Revolution. So, what led to the war in the South, and why is it important? Well, going into what we're filming for the content here on the channel, I want to give you a preliminary background as to what we're dealing with. And prior to the American Revolution and upon the conclusion of the French and Indian Wars, 7 Years' War, you had the Treaty of Paris being signed. Now, one of the things that the Treaty of Paris did was it split the American colonies up to two. It showed where the American colonies on the map were to be at. Now, westward expansion outside of those American colonies, which was a line drawn through the Appalachians, was not to be expanded past that line. So you had Appalachians and you had the American colonies, if you're looking at a map on the right. And then on the left, you had something called land reserved for Native Americans. Native Americans love this because up under British rule and British law, the American colonies were not allowed to expand past the Appalachian line into this section that was reserved for the Native Americans. Of course, the Native Americans love this, and all of this being as a result of the Treaty of Paris prior to the American Revolution. Now, what that did is it started to anger some of the colonists a little bit. There's Jack. Dang, look at that elf ginger right there. Yeah. My buddy Jack in the chat. But what this did is it started angering the colonists through the Treaty of Paris and its division between the American colonies, and where they could not expand westward past that line, it was land reserved for Native Americans. So all of this and then taxation without representation ultimately leads to the American Revolution. The American Revolution starts out very poorly for the American colonists. It is not going well. It is not going well at all. But the British also see a need to shift the war in 1778 from the northern part of where you think about it now, Pennsylvania, the area of Connecticut, Boston, Massachusetts, and Virginia. You see, they started to see a need. The British start to see a need to capture the southern part of the American colonies. There's a couple of reasons for this. They believed in the South that, and they were right, that there were more loyalists to the British Crown in the South. And they wanted to take advantage of this. Also, what do you have in the South? Well, you have West Florida, which is on the Gulf of Mexico, a major shipping port. You have Savannah, Georgia, which is a major shipping port. You have Charleston, South Carolina, which is a major shipping port. If you close off the goods coming into the American colonies, you choke them out. If they can't get goods and men out, it's not a good thing. And these are the major shipping ports for the American colonies. Well, what ends up happening is in 1778, Lieutenant Colonel Archibald Campbell comes in and captures Savannah, Georgia on December 29th, 1778. And then Savannah, Georgia falls up under the British occupation. The British rip apart one of those stripes off the flag and one of those stars off the flag of the American colonies. They have Georgia back in British control. So in the fall of 1779, the American colonies see a need to take back Savannah, Georgia. The British had tried also to route into Charleston, South Carolina, but failed the first times that they tried to do this. And with Savannah being a major port of commerce, well, the American colonies said, we need to take back the Savannah, Georgia, from the British who had, taken it over on December 29th, 1778. So in the fall of 1779, you have a guy by the name of Benjamin Lincoln. Now, Benjamin Lincoln is in control in Charleston, South Carolina. He's the guy who was picked to send to control the southern part of the war. And there's a few issues with Benjamin Lincoln. He proved himself in, administration matters up north. He proved himself in battles up north. He was wounded by taking a British musket ball to his ankle. So he was wounded. And he also had another problem that really posed a big problem, and I find this kind of humorous, is he had narcolepsy, which he would fall asleep at the most inopportune times. This guy would be sitting up straight talking to you and just slump over asleep. Because you imagine, if you're in the middle of a freaking war and you're sitting here meeting with your generals, Benjamin Lincoln's in the room, you're telling him some important information about his southern defenses of the colonies, and he's like, yeah, I think we need to do that. That was the case with Benjamin Lincoln. And I find that part humorous. But Benjamin Lincoln, nevertheless, having this medical condition or not, was proving himself to be a kind of effective leader to some, and then others didn't think very highly of him at all. But nevertheless, he was the one who was put in the command of the southern defenses of the American colonies. And he's based in Charleston. Well, he has about 5,000 to 10,000 men, according to who do you read and what accounts you read, up under his command. And he is ready to take back Charleston, take back Savannah, and defend Charleston the best he can. But he knows that he can't do it by himself. So he, at this time, the American colonies had allied themselves with the French. The French had an alliance with American colonies, and they would depend on them highly for their help. So Benjamin Lincoln calls in the help of the French, and he calls in the help of the form of a guy by the name of Charles Hector, who is the Commandant d'Estaing, and I probably butchered the crap out of that, but it's okay. But basically, Charles Hector is the guy who ends up getting on a bunch of boats with a bunch of other French soldiers, and they come into Savannah, Georgia. And they have a fleet of warships, and they're equipped with about 4,000 men. So they arrive before Lincoln's troops do to Savannah, Georgia. And they end up starting to lay a little siege to the city of Savannah. And then when Lincoln arrives on around September the 11th, he leaves Charleston, and I do have a little bit of notes. And then he begins the operations for the offensive against Charleston on September the 16th. And so the French arrive earlier than the American colonists and militia troops do, and they're just sitting there in Savannah waiting on these guys to come. Now let's think about something for a minute. You think of Savannah, Georgia right now in present day, and you think about the big town. Well, at this time, it wasn't like that. Savannah was very swampy. Savannah was a very treacherous terrain. It's right on the river, and it's right on the Gulf, and it is hot, it is humid, and it is swampy land. Just not the best land in the world. Well, the British have defenses built up around Savannah, and the main part of those defenses is called the Spring Hill Redoubts. Now, the whole city of Savannah, if you go there today, there's not a lot actually preserved. There's one area downtown where the main area of the Spring Hill Redoubt was that is preserved. There is some reproduction stockades that is thrown up, but it's just a little small area in the middle of town, probably no more than a football field or two. So there's a very small area that's actually preserved. Now, anywhere you go in the city of Savannah, it was pretty much that battlefield from September, October of 1779. And we're going to be kind of examining that in some episodes that we're going to be shooting in Savannah coming up. So it is going to be an experience, because you're going to see firsthand what is not left of this history in Savannah. Just this little small part in a nice little museum, and that's about it. And some statues. Let's see. Lebanese have never heard anything about the southern area before. Love you, Dad. Don't forget Fort Mills is this weekend, though you can't. Yeah. Battle of Fort Mills reenactments this weekend. Won't be there. Let's see. Jack says, I remember this part in the documentary, The Patriot. We'll get to The Patriot in just a few moments. Yeah, I've got some things I want to hit on The Patriot. But what happens is the French is off the coast. They're waiting on the Americans to arrive. Benjamin Lincoln's and his troops arrive. And on the morning of October, They ended up in September the 16th creating these operations, offensive operations. There we go. Can't get it out. So September 16th, 1779, they start getting into this area of the offensive operations, trying to take back the city of Savannah. They set out early that morning. There is a fog covering the battlefield, which poses one problem. Fog equals visibility. Well, with fog, you don't have visibility. If you can't see what's in front of you, you can't shoot at it. Just like during the American Civil War, during the Revolutionary War, you have something called line of sight, line of fire. You see what you can, you shoot at what you can see. If you can't see it, you can't shoot it. And it doesn't matter if it's artillery or small arms. If you can't see it, you can't shoot it. It's not like today's military. So this fog creates a visibility issue, and that is going to wreak havoc with the French and American colonist soldiers as they're trying to advance on the British redoubts. Another thing that poses a problem is they're up under the impression there's more British loyalist militia there than there is British regular army. They're completely wrong. There's a lot of British regular army there. There's also loyalist militia, but there is a lot of British regular army, more than what they anticipated. Millsap Duro, Savannah is a beautiful city, was over there 4th of July, and you're right, there isn't much left there. Also, the cobblestone area down by the river. Yeah, well, we'll talk more about that in a minute too. But Savannah is a beautiful, beautiful city. But we'll talk more about that in a second too. I want to hit on that a little bit more. So on this morning, September 16th, you have the fog creating visibility issues. You got them thinking there's more British loyalist militia as opposed to regular soldiers, and they're dead wrong. The regular soldiers that's there are battle hardened and tested guys. These guys know what they're doing and they know how to do their job effectively. Now the British only have about 3,000 men, as opposed to the 5,000 to 10,000 men, whatever account you read of the American colonists and their numbers. But it isn't going to matter. Okay, these numbers of men, just get it out your head. It's not going to make a darn bit of difference to the American colonists and the French soldiers that are assaulting the British redoubt positions and defenses in Savannah. It's not going to make a difference. The numbers, even though they're outnumbering the British, it doesn't make one bit of difference. Are these operations conducted with mainly uniformed continental troops or militias? It is a mixture between the two. The American colonists have some regulars, but it's more militia, because you got to think about it at the time. They're in the southern hemisphere, southern end of this thing. Most of the regular soldiers are going to be in the north at the bigger places, the places that they, today we think isn't important, which in reality, we'll get to it in a minute, isn't as important as this. And this is the reason why. So as they're assaulting these British positions, the British put up a stout defense. As the French and Americans close into the positions, all of a sudden the fog lifts. They're hundreds of yards, just a few hundred yards away from this redoubt, and they find themselves in a hell of gunfire. I mean, it is an absolute savage hell of gunfire, and they cannot hold out. You had Pulaski, a guy by the name of Pulaski, who's known as the father of the American cavalry. He is going to be wounded. You got Fort Pulaski there in the Savannah area that is named after him today. Well, Pulaski is going to be mortally wounded during this fight, and he's going to die some days after while he's getting treated. But he was a Frenchman who was tasked and granted permission to raise a number of about 400 men, if I'm not mistaken, with some cavalry. And he is known as the godfather of the American cavalry today. But he is going to be mortally wounded in this thing. Also, you're going to have your French general, Estaing, who's going to basically, after an hour, look at this thing and go, nope, this ain't working. And he's going to pull his French forces out. They're going to go back to the ships, and the American militia and regulars are going to be stuck here fighting for their lives. They're unable to capture back this city of Savannah from the British. And Benjamin Lincoln decides on October the 18th, 1779, it is a good idea to go ahead and pull out. Now, the French leave. As I said, they get back on their ships and they pull out of the area with, you know, he's sitting here looking at the situation and he's going, okay, we're not going to take this. It's hurricane season. Storms like to come in at this time. It better be in our best interest to get the heck out of Dodge. So Stang orders his men to pull out of the city of Savannah, and Lincoln, later in October, pulls out of the city of Savannah himself, leaving Savannah, Georgia, in British control. And then you've got a guy by the name of Cornwallis, who the British have tasked with taking the city of Charleston. Now the British have their eyes set on Charleston. They've got Savannah. Now they want Charleston. So they set their eyes on Charleston. Lincoln is back in Charleston, and Lincoln does not want to give up Charleston, South Carolina. I don't care how you put it or how you say it or word it. Lincoln is just dead headstrong on we're going to defend Charleston. But they can't. And all of these soldiers, this account of the colonial soldiers here during the siege of Charleston, that's thinking to themselves, why are we still here? Because in their accounts, they're talking about getting shelled day and night and just the horrible conditions that they're having to endure. And then you have a guy by the name of Tarleton mixed in with this, and we'll get to in a minute, and we'll start kind of, a lot of you guys seen the movie The Patriot. You love the movie The Patriot, had a question about The Patriot. We're going to get into that when we talk about Tarleton in a minute. But what the British do, Cornwallis ends up sending troops onto the area of James Island, just off the coast of South Carolina, and they start setting up a military blockade around Savannah. Nothing can get in, nothing can get it out. If the American colonists can't get goods in, can't get goods out, they're going to starve them out the city, unsupply them out the city, and they're going to start shelling the city. And they think that a lot of the civilians in Charleston are British loyalists. So they're going to want this thing to end quickly. And it kind of goes in their favor a little bit, because after a long siege, then you have these civilians who are just sick and tired of getting bombed. Civilians are losing their lives in some cases. Houses are getting bombed. Businesses are getting bombed. This is their livelihood. And after a while, Lincoln has no choice but to surrender the city of Charleston. Well, then you've got this British cavalry commander named Tarleton. And I'm trying to think of the name of the certain place, but I can't. But it's right outside of Charleston, South Carolina. Some of the Americans are trying to escape, and they're trying to make their way out of Charleston to escape capture. What does Tarleton do? Well, he gets orders to kind of go over and stop that. And trust me, he stops it. He kills every one of them, and he just guns them down. Tarleton, if you want to talk about the movie The Patriot, Tarleton is depicted in the film The Patriot. And he's depicted, in my opinion, there's a lot wrong in the movie The Patriot, but in my opinion, that's one of the things The Patriot gets right, is kind of showing the brutality that this cavalry commander named Tarleton had. When you see him in the movie The Patriot killing people for no reason, it's true. He did do that. At a place called Waxhaw, after the city of Charleston falls, the American troops are retreating northward. They're going back up towards Virginia. Well, at Waxhaw, Tarleton catches up with them. He just outright delivers I don't even know how to put it. I mean, it was just devastating. And war crimes, baby. Yeah. It was war crimes at its best. Tarleton was known for his brutality. He was actually just slaughtering the retreating American colonists. They're trying to surrender. He's just cutting them down. They throw their guns up. They got their hands in the air saying, we give up. Okay, off for your head. And that's basically what he was doing. He was taking the British guerrilla warfare to the extreme, and he was feared by American colonists. Well, Tarleton later on in the history of the American Revolution is going to get his. Trust me, he's going to get his. So the movie The Patriot does a tremendous job depicting Tarleton. They also have a guy they depict called Gates. Now, Gates was appointed as a commander after the events of the fall of Charleston, and he was one that they thought would turn it around. He knew how to command militia. And the Patriot does an okay job at this, but Gates was also kind of hated. People thought he was a damn fool, and he was. And you see that line in the Patriot. Gates is a damn fool. It is accurate. People didn't like Gates. You also had another guy in that by the name of Nathaniel Greene. Now, Nathaniel Greene knew what he was doing. Nathaniel Greene knew how to command militia. He knew how to not win a battle, but he knew how to break the spirits of the British Army. If you go back and look at victories won by Nathaniel Greene in the American Revolution, there are very few, maybe one or two. But he is known as one of the greatest commanders of the American Revolution, not for his victories, but for knowing how to command militia and how to win battles without winning battles. He had said, and I forgot exactly how he quoted this, but he had made a quote to the effect that winning a battle to me isn't what matters. How you win battle is how you fight psychologically. Nathaniel Greene was a mastermind and an absolute freaking genius at this. He is not known for winning battles. He's known for breaking the spirit of the British Army. And this ultimately leads to an American victory in American Revolution. I don't care how you put it. You can give George Washington all the credit you want to give George Washington. George Washington isn't the only reason why the American forces won the American Revolution. It is because of guys like Nathaniel Greene who had a big hand in this, because he knew how to command militia. The American Army was not well trained before Valley Forge. They were in an absolute mess. As a matter of fact, they did not win a single battle before going in camp at Valley Forge. You read all these accounts from Valley Forge about how horrible it was, about guys freezing to death, not enough food. Yes, this is true, okay? It were some bad times experienced at Valley Forge. But what they don't talk about is another guy who comes into Valley Forge called von Steuben, who trains the American soldiers on how to fight. They have no clue how to fight. He goes into Valley Forge, and he basically puts these guys through a ringer of a boot camp, and when they come out, they win the Battle of Monmouth. And the reason why they win is because of von Steuben, who is known today as the man who is all the discipline that you see in the military. This is who this is patterned after, is von Steuben. Von Steuben turns the war around for the American colonists. And then, in the Southern Theater of Operations, what turns the war around is a couple of key events. Savannah was the worst loss during the entire war by the American colonists as far as numbers. They had over 5,000 men that ended up, let me get this right. Savannah was the worst fight for the Americans during the American Revolution with the most losses, because they lost over 1,000 men. In Savannah, the British only lost 100. During the Battle of Savannah, grasp those numbers. The American colonists lost over 1,000 soldiers. The British only lost 100. That is not good numbers. That is horrible numbers. Charleston is the biggest loss of the American colonists for the entire war. They have over 5,000 men who surrender in Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston is an important city that falls, making it the biggest loss, most important loss during the whole American Revolution for the colonists. So, and it's put on the back burner. It is overshadowed by George Washington. It is overshadowed by places like Lexington, Concord, and Yorktown. It is overshadowed by Valley Forge. It is overshadowed by these other events. You don't hear of the Southern Theater of Operations during the American Revolution, when in fact it is the most important actions of the entire American Revolution. No, no debating it. There's no debating that fact at all. It is a fact. That is the way it is. So Nathaniel Greene, father of the American Unconventional Forces, he was. And it's because of guys like Nathaniel Greene that the American colonists are able to take a really horrible situation. Savannah falling, horrible. Charleston falling, even worse. Charleston is a major port. These are the two most important actions of the entire American Revolution. It wasn't Yorktown, it wasn't Lexington, it wasn't the Battle of Concord. It was what happened in the Southern Theater of Operations, and you don't hear anything about it today. It is overshadowed by George Washington and all these other events like Yorktown. Valley Forge was one of the most important events of the whole American Revolution. Why? It wasn't because Washington's army was starving to death and eating their feet. It was because you had this guy come in and train these soldiers on how to be soldiers. You were talking about Casimir Pulaski earlier, correct? I think you said it was French. He was actually Polish, born in Warsaw. I didn't mean to say if he's French if I did. Yeah, Pulaski was Polish. He was born in Warsaw, Poland, and he is the godfather of the American cavalry. He was giving the orders and allowed to build an army. I think it was about 400 men and a number of horses. And the truck got off. Need to start that back up because my air conditioner is keeping me from burning the heck up right now. But yeah, if I said that, that was an absolute mistake. Pulaski was not French, he was Polish. So I didn't even realize I said that. No, I got off on the French tangent with a sting and just kept talking about the French apparently. But yes, Pulaski was Polish. And if you go to Savannah today, there is Fort Pulaski, which is a Civil War third system fortification that you can actually go visit, and is named after Pulaski. And you can go there. There's a little bit of information, cool information there on him as well. And they do a good job there actually talking about why the fort was named after him. He was known for showboating and was known for standing up on his horse. Yeah, I have read accounts of that too. Pulaski was a, how do you say this? An exquisite officer. And he was known for having a crisp, just decked out uniform. And he was known for pulling stunts that were really unconventional and not really called for. And he loved the attention. Pulaski loved the attention, but he was very good at it. I mean, I give it to him. He was very good at what he did. He knew he was very good at what he did. But fortunately, Savannah is going to do him in, and he's going to die from wounds sustained at Savannah. So Savannah just, kind of does Pulaski in a little bit, and that's the end of him. But he does leave a solid reputation for taking the fame for creating the cavalry that we knew or used to know, and now it's helicopters. Eccentric. Yeah, he was a little eccentric. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. And the thing about it at the time too is a lot of these guys were eccentric. Lincoln was kind of eccentric himself, even though he was a hefty 5'9", I believe, something foot tall. He was a short, fat guy, and fell asleep all the time. So, I mean, these guys were characters. When you start diving in to the commanders, the French commanders, the British commanders, the American commanders, during this time frame, every one of them I have read about has something a little humorous about them, and a little eccentric about them, and a little just kind of off. I have come to the realization and the belief that every American Revolution general was a little off in the head, and Cornwallis went no different. I mean, he was really off in the head. Gates, really off in the head. Gates took off on his horse and rode like the wind because he got his butt handed to him, and he lived with that for the rest of his life. He took off on his horse and rode something like 60 miles. I think Benjamin Franklin, said something about Gates was kind of surprised me for an old man to ride that fast and that long, that far, in that short amount of time. So, yeah, Gates got a really bad reputation. And then you got Nathaniel Green, who had to have something off in his head to be able to command like he did. So these guys were all off on the head a little bit. But the central point of this whole spill and conversation is this: the Southern Campaign of Operations during the American Revolution does not get the attention it deserves. It does not get the spotlight it deserves. It was the most important actions of the whole entire American Revolution. And I haven't even talked about West Florida or St. Augustine. And we will also talk about that in the future here as well. But you had some things going on with Spanish West Florida and St. Augustine as well. And this is one whole big multitude of operations. Are there any actions in Mobile, Alabama? There are a couple of actions in Mobile, Alabama. No really big military actions per se. Mobile is more or less of a passing through and is concerned with West Florida. But we will hit on that a little bit with Fort Charlotte and Mobile. We will talk a little bit about that in the future on another episode. So we will hit on the role of Mobile, Alabama. Since it is so close to Pensacola, Florida, there was a little bit of action there, but not in the sense of what's going on in Savannah and in the area of Charleston, South Carolina. St. Augustine had quite a bit of stuff going on, and Pensacola had a couple of engagements, but there were those would be a little bit of separate topics about the American Revolution in the South we would hit on. We're going to open this up with Savannah and Charleston. And when we go to Savannah, I want to show you guys, I'm an avid supporter of the American Battlefield Trust. That's no secret. You guys see me mention them on every single episode on this channel. And I'm going to show you when we go to Savannah, you're going to be able to see as we go along there together why the American Battlefield Trust is such an important organization. When you go to Savannah today, Neil Duro mentioned it a few moments ago, and I said we were going to get back to it, was that if you go to Savannah today, as I said earlier, you have the Spring Hill Redoubt, which is preserved. There's some reproduction stockade there. It's very small earthwork, very small stockade. As a matter of fact, it's probably not any longer than 60 or 70 yards. And then the area that is preserved, the Spring Hill Redoubt section, is only probably the length of 2 football fields. Other than that, and a small museum that is just sitting on it, the site itself, there's nothing else besides historical markers and cemeteries in Savannah that are remnants left of this fight during the American Revolution, which ultimately was one of the most important battles of the whole American Revolution. And it's sad but it is also understandable at the same time. If you go down the riverfront of Savannah, it is a very neat place. They've got some reproduction cobblestone streets, and it's a very neat area, and there's a lot of literature down there you can go read to on the shipping and different things in Savannah during this time frame. There's some buildings that are preserved from this time frame, but other than the buildings, as far as the battlefield itself, there's nothing but that one area. If you go through Savannah, through all the parks that Savannah is known for, you see all these statues, and in these areas of these parks where a lot of this stuff actually occurred too. And we will be traveling to a lot of the cemeteries. The Jewish cemetery will be one that we will be hitting on in Savannah. Colonial Cemetery will be another, and we'll go to some of these parks, show some of these statues, and talk about some of the things that used to be there. There's a nice statue of Pulaski in Savannah. Also, Haitians, which helped fill the ranks of the American colonists. We'll talk about those guys a little bit. A lot of people don't realize the Haitians even took part in this. And there's a nice memorial to the Haitians in Savannah during the American Revolution. We'll take a look at that as well in Savannah. But there's not a lot left, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we go to Savannah, and you'll see what organizations from this, like the American Battlefield Trust, are so important. Love you and 3,000. You know, Joseph Fry was touched in the head. That's the reason why I remember great leaders. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm touched in the head too. Yeah, I had a grandfather who served in the French and Indian Wars, 7 Years' War. That was also considered for command of the Continental Army before Washington. But him and Washington hated one another, like I said in previous things on here. And him and Washington hated one another. He called Washington a womanizing drunk and gambler, and good for nothing, low down, sorry, you know what. And well, him and Washington didn't like one another, and his correspondence between the two, maybe I'll share that on the channel in the future, talking about this. But they said he was not fit for military command because they didn't like him. They said he wasn't fit for military command and had him exited from the military. Oh God. So, Jack, might run out of gas I-10 before Bucky's may need your help. Okay. Let me know. But you guys remember Jack from the channel, my best friend here. He's having a hard day. Yeah, just let me know. But yeah, we'll get more of that later in the future on the channel, probably. But after we get done with this American Revolutionary War series, we are headed to upstate New York to explore some French and Indian war sites. We got some work to do up there, so we'll be going there, exploring some French and Indian war sites. And that is something that you do not see, and I have not seen on YouTube hardly at all, is French and Indian war content. So we will be exploring a very neat fort there, a couple of different places. I'm not 100% sure. This is going to be one of those trips where I'm going to go and see what I can find. I have, some things already planned out. But for the most part, get there, do a lot of research, a lot of reading, see what we're near and what we can go find as far as French and Indian war sites. It's going to be an adventure. I wanted to visit the Weld Military Museum, but ran out of time. It's a small museum. I heard it's a pretty good museum. Yes, if you're ever in Savannah, Georgia, you're looking for a good military museum, and you can buy some military art, antiques as well. The Weld Military Museum, you've seen them here on the channel. I have a video where I visited them in the past. It is a very cool museum to go check out, and it's pretty much a must-see. It is a very good, small military, private military museum, and he has some pretty cool stuff in there. So go check him out if you're in Savannah. Charleston, we will be getting into the the good stuff, the greasy American Revolutionary War, siege of Charleston history. When we go to Charleston, you'll see some of that. Also, we'll be shooting a little bit of Civil War content, not much, that we will run on the channel at a later date. So you'll see some of that stuff pop up at some point here on the channel. But while we're there, why not get it anyway? That's the Civil War content. May do some stuff at Fort Sumter. The Hunley, not 100% sure yet as far as Civil War stuff, because my main area I want to focus on this trip is American Revolutionary War stuff, and Civil War stuff will be if I have time. Because I want to get the main content I'm going for first. And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure of everything I'm going to find in Charleston. I have an idea of the things already that we're going to, but I'll always find extra stuff. So it would be time pressed. But that is what's going on. Also, we're in the process of creating a podcast, adding a podcast, Jack and I, to the channel as a supplement. So you may be seeing a podcast come up as well. So hopefully you guys will be able to enjoy a history podcast. It will be called the Kilroy History Podcast. And you guys will see, not only World War II stuff, but also stuff like this and some reenacting stuff, just anything history. So it's going to be a pretty good supplement to what we're doing here as well. So with all of that being said, we've been on here for about 45 minutes, but I need to show you Doolittle's Raiders training site near Eglin. Yes, we do need to do that. But Jack and I have talked about doing a video together at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, and that is where the Doolittle Raiders train. So that is another future video we have talked about doing and are planning to do at some point and some Doolittle content. So that's going to be very neat. Maybe we can get the History Underground or Project Pass or someone involved in that. And guys, if you haven't checked out their channels, the History Underground, Project Pass, Vlogging Through History, American Battlefield Trust Forward, Gettysburg, and the Battle of Gettysburg podcast, and of course, our sponsors, Addressing Gettysburg. Addressing Gettysburg, best Gettysburg podcast you can ever listen to. So definitely need to check out Addressing Gettysburg. Go support them, please. They support me. Go support them, please. It is a cool podcast. They've got a great YouTube channel as well. You can catch all kinds of content and live streams on there, and I love listening to them. They just had my favorite Civil War historian on, Miss Sue, and go check it out and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I met her in Gettysburg, and man, I almost started crying. I swear I did. She is one of my favorite historians of all time. And I also met Carol Reardon, who is another one of my favorite historians of all time. And that's who they had on, was Carol Reardon, not Sue Boardman, but Carol Reardon on the Addressing Gettysburg podcast here recently. So Carol Reardon was on there, not Sue. But I met Carol Reardon on the battlefield actually at Gettysburg, and she, signed my Gettysburg Field Guide to Gettysburg book, which is an awesome book you have to pick up. And we chatted for a minute, but she is an instrumental part with American Battlefield Trust in preserving Gettysburg, and by far my favorite Civil War historian and professor to follow. So very, very nice lady, and very, very professional and knowledgeable historian. So yeah, a lot of stuff coming up. We've got the wheat field coming up on the channel next. You guys will see that either today or tomorrow, a new episode popping up here from the Gettysburg 160th. Then we will switch gears to, I don't know what is that episodes after that off the top of my head. But then we also have the Beyond the Battle Museum in Gettysburg, and look at that place. You don't want to miss that episode. And then we'll be leaving Gettysburg, going to Antietam. Antietam, we will leave and go to Harper's Ferry to a very, very short video at Newmarket, the Field of Lost Shoes. And then we will be into Valley Forge, Independence Hall, the Liberty Bell, and then kicking into Savannah and Charleston. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for all your support on the channel. I really do appreciate it. It's been very busy here lately. And as we prepare for Savannah, Charleston, and then upstate New York for French and Indian War stuff, there's a lot more coming. So be on the lookout. Share the channel with your friends, and make sure you watch the videos. The best way you can help out, if you want to help the channel out, is watch the videos. There's some different buttons there as well. We haven't set up the Patreon yet. We're in the process of kind of planning on doing that, but there's different things on the channel. If you want to help the channel out, you can do that. But the best way to help the channel out, to me, is share it with your friends. Our thing is learning history together. That's what we're doing. So anyway, yeah, we're going to jump off here. We're going to continue. We've got to get stuff going as we get ready to head out to Savannah. I'm doing stuff today, running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to get stuff ready to leave, and then tend to the daily duties of life and cross the P's and Q's here so we can go on the road again. So appreciate everyone stopping in, watching the live stream. We'll see you on the next episode of History Saver 1941. Until then, keep preserving history. Stay safe. We'll see you from Savannah, Georgia. See you then.